Okay, it is 10 a.m. and this officially marks the start of our webinar today. We have our guests slowly but surely joining in. This is a live session. The session has been recorded. So please smile if your camera is on. We will start at 10:05 just to give everyone a chance to join us on the link. So in the meantime, please sit back and relax and get ready to be a part of today's discussion, which I know would be impactful and interesting. Thank you so much. Good morning to all our guests who are joining us for today's discussion. We're going to begin at 10:05, just to give everyone a chance to join in on the link. In the meantime, I'm just going to introduce our speakers today on today's panel, who will be presenting the findings of the Sekhukhune Social Ownership Report. As you do join, please feel free to drop your name, your organization in the chat, say hi, and we will recognize you. We will be starting at 10:05. In the meantime, I have the honor of introducing our speakers for today's discussion. I'm going to begin with Robert Cross, who's the researcher and acting head of Program Environmental Justice at CALS, which is a Center for Applied Legal Studies based at the University of Witwatersrand. With an LLB and LLM in Public and Constitutional Law from the University of Cape Town, his work focuses on promoting environmental and climate justice, particularly in mining, spatial planning, and climate policy. Robert is passionate about building a working class oriented movement through community and worker solidarity, and his interests include Marxist social theory, democratic ownership, and public participation in justice efforts. Welcome, Robert, and thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to your insights. In the panel, we also have Katlego Melissa. She is a SISMAC project coordinator. SISMAC stands for the Sekhukhune Combined Mining Affected Communities. Katlego is a community activist in Sekhukhune Burgersfort in Limpopo. Living near mining operations, she works to promote and protect human rights and social justice. She serves as the Deputy Secretary of Meldacon and is the current project coordinator for SISMAC. Katlego has been active in movements from environmental and human rights justice, working with organizations like CALS, Lawyers for Human Rights, 350.org, Amnesty International. In 2022, she was recognized as a Sowetan unsung hero. Her work is driven by a deep passion for human rights and climate justice. Welcome, Katlego, and thank you for being with us today. On our panel today, we also have Mareka Mukoloatlo, Director and Senior Researcher. Mareka is a dedicated development practitioner, researcher, and project manager with over 15 years of experience advancing sustainable socioeconomic change in South Africa. She is the founder and managing director of Ahimsa, a Black female-owned consultancy that delivers community-led, evidence-based development programs. Mareka's work focuses on participatory research, social impact, and just energy transition, guided by the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Through Ahimsa, she champions inclusive, people-centered approaches that promote community ownership and lasting transformation. Please wave your hand, Mareka, so we know where you are. Thank you so much for joining us. To our guests who are attending, we are soon going to start. Please drop your name in the chat and your organization. We'd like to say hi. We are now introducing our panelists. I now have the pleasure of introducing Farron Pedro. She's a senior campaigner at 350 Africa, based in South Africa. She works on climate and energy justice campaigns in partnership with unions and community organizations. He's become interested in social movements as a university student, became active in the Fees Must Fall and Outsourcing Must Fall movements. She worked as a union educator and campaigns organizer in the Trade Union Federation SAPTU. She has a master's from the University of Cape Town in Development Studies with a specific interest in popular education and new social movements. Can we get away from Farron? Hi, Farron. Please say hi, wave your hands. Awesome. So we have a healthy audience. Thank you so much to all who are joining us this morning as we present the Sekhukhune Social Ownership Report, Concrete Models for Socially Owned Renewable Energy, the case for Sekhukhune combined mining affected communities. It is a pleasure to have all of you with us today for the launch of this social ownership report, which has taken many months, many people, many communities, many debates, many conversations to work together this report, which we are now really excited to present to you today. My name is Buitumelo. Buitumelo Masipa. I am a digital and communication specialist at 350.org. I am based in South Africa. I work alongside Farron and the rest of the team who've been involved in this report. Okay, so just for some context and some grounding, actually before that, let me just get into some quick housekeeping. We are recording this session. The session is live, and so if your camera is on, please smile. The session today we have is until from 10 and ending at 11:30. Our agenda is hopefully short and sweet, but mainly going through the SISMAC report and the SISMAC campaign for socially owned renewables and why we have undertaken this research. Presentations as well from Ahinsa explaining the research methodology and objectives. Robert from CALS will be taking us through the findings of the report. And then we will then have Katlego from SISMAC presenting again the proposed SISMAC social ownership model, specific model that SISMAC have a particular interest in. Next, we will have Farron Pedro, who will then talk us through the next steps for this campaign and for this campaign at large, and we will then have some minutes set aside for Q&A, and then hopefully at 11:30, no later. Of course, if we do close it and not all the questions have come through, we will gather all the questions, and we will like to stay in touch with you after this webinar and give you a chance to still send in your questions so that we can answer them and continue to engage. So this is an ongoing discussion, ongoing engagement. So please do stick around to support this campaign. Now for some background before we get into our presentations for today. So for very long, mining affected communities in South Africa have been exploited and excluded, left out to bear the environmental and social costs of mining. Decisions have long been made about them, but without them. We are here today with the Sekhukhune combined mining affected communities in solidarity with them as they reimagine their energy future and reclaim the power with a vision for social ownership. Through this webinar, we will explore the potential of socially owned renewable energy as a transformative solution for mining affected communities. Using the report, our speakers will explore how socially owned renewable energy can address long-standing issues of socioeconomic exclusion, environmental damage, and energy insecurity in mining communities. Social ownership underscores the crucial role of state entities like ESCOM and the responsibility of mining companies enabling socially owned renewable energy projects. So this discussion will provide an important understanding on how mining companies, government agencies, and local communities can advance a just transition towards a socially owned energy system. Our objective today is to understand what a socially owned, community-led future can look like, how mines have failed communities and what needs to change, hear the real stories from communities fighting for energy justice. We thank you so much for being with us today and accepting this invitation to stand in solidarity with those leading the fight for a just transition. I will now pass the floor to Katlego, who will open our agenda for today. Over to you, Katlego.
Good morning, everyone. And we like to say thank you to each and every one of you who managed to take your time to come and be with us on this very, very important campaign and presentation from our organization. So I'm going to take you through the background of where the Socially Owned Renewable Energy Project comes from, whereby we are SISMEC, which is Sekhukhune Combined Mining Affected Community in the Sekhukhune area, Sekhukhune municipality, where we are affected by about plus minus 41 mining companies, which are extracting platinum and chrome. So in these communities, we gathered as communities and realized that communities that does not have access to income generating project. Whenever we go to the mining companies when they are doing their social and labor plan, so communities that is not they are not being recognized in terms of their the Socially Owned Renewable Energy Project, which we believe that it will bring many justice to the communities and income generating project also to the communities. So as an organization, we felt that it's very important to fight for the justice of these communities. And as an organization, we said and come up with a plan of what is it that we can do that can be able to assist communities in terms of making sure that the mining companies do make sure that they see the income generating project as important to the communities, and how social owned renewable energy is also very important. Hence, we dealing with issues of load shedding, but then the communities does not have access to electricity, whereby they are living close to the mines, and the mines does have electricity by them. So we came together as an organization, identified the core team members, which are from 9 tribal authorities. Then we came together and said, let's put our heads together and come up with a solution of whereby we can make sure that these mining companies do recognize socially owned renewable energy and also income generating projects as a way of making sure that communities do have access to their free basic electricity, and also communities have also have job creation. In terms of job creation, they can be able to work for themselves. So we came together and said the core team should then come and identify communities whereby we can go and see what other communities do in terms of renewable energy. Then we visited about 4 communities, which are Witbank, Gqeberha, Eastern Cape, and Tsitsikamma, also in Western Cape or Western Cape, somewhere there. So we have seen that the communities of Witbank also make a living for the communities in terms of making sure that communities access the electricity through the solar panels, which they can also be assisted in terms of charging their cell phones, making sure that they boil water from the solar as well for the communities. So we also learned that in Tsitsikamma there is a wind turbine, which then we felt that wind turbine needs a lot of air, but in Sekhukhune we do have a lot of sun. So it was a good initiative for them. But in Sekhukhune, since we have a lot of sun, we felt that it is important that we use the solar as our social owned renewable energy. So we then conducted a research coming back from these different villages. We came back and conducted research in these 4 areas of Sekhukhune, which the villages are Morapaneng, Mahopa, Ditwebeleng, and Manchekane. So we identify those villages which are closer to the mine to make sure that we conduct research and see how communities do understand when they speak about social owned renewable energy and what do they understand about renewable energy. So we also conducted those research and had different views about renewable energy and the socially owned renewable. How do they understand own renewable, which we felt that we want communities to own their own electricity, to be able to have their own electricity and sell the electricity to also municipality and maybe ESCOM as well. So we conducted the research with the core team from different communities and villages. And then we also had some challenges whereby people misunderstood what we wanted to do, and we had to explain to them that no, this is your own renewable energy that is going to be owned by you, and you will be having your own free basic electricity, which will be coming from the sun. What you need to do is to also make sure that you identify the area or the farm that you think that the solar farm will be based at. So this was a very important and a very interesting research for us as Sekhukhune Combined Mining Affected Community, to make sure that our communities are recognized, and our communities, when coming to the mining activities and the social and labor plan, they also identify the incoming generating projects as the very important projects for the communities, whereby community can be able to have their own social owned renewable and be able to access the free basic electricity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katlego. It's such important context, really just locating where the struggle for energy justice sits, particularly in mining affected communities in Burgersfort and the Sekhukhune Combined region. And these are communities that have long been involved in mining activities and the energy system, but not as beneficiaries, but as laborers. And so it's such a powerful tribute to see what the SysMac group are doing today, and this report that they're presenting in collaboration with the organizations today. So thank you so much, Kasia, for giving us that context. We'll now hear from Mareka, who will give us the objectives of the research that was undertaken. Over to you, Mareka.
Thank you very much to me. Yes, my name is Mareka Mukwatlo from Ahimsa. I greet you all, those who've made time to come and attend and support this campaign as well. Katlego, I think, has laid out very comprehensive background, contextual background of why this campaign specifically. And that background has informed the objectives of the study that we undertaken, the objectives that we aimed to achieve with the study. I think the first objective, we aim to tell the story of this community, to highlight their lived experiences and to humanize the aspirations for these socially owned renewables in the just energy transition that is supported and funded through mining SLPs, social labor plans, right? So in brief, SysMac in Sekhukhune, Tubatse local municipality, and this municipality is the biggest in the Sekhukhune district municipality. It represents approximately 297, a majority rural villages in that area. And those villages are spread across 29 wards, and there are approximately 21. And I could be, thanks Katlego for mentioning that it might be higher now to 41 mining operations, mostly extracting chrome and platinum. Notably, the big mining companies in the area include Anglo-American, Implants, African Rainbow Minerals, Sifateng, etc., with Eskom being their primary electricity provider. With the second objective, our aim was to provide, a regulatory framework and background to socially owned renewables. What is it, looking at the policies and regulatory frameworks that will enable socially owned renewables, especially in areas such as Begersfort, where they've got such a number of mining companies, where communities can benefit from. So our report does lay out the importance of a just energy transition, and in particular, the Climate Justice Green New Eskom campaign. It does outline the regulatory and policy frameworks that are there, such as the Electricity Regulations Act, which we hope that we can advise in terms of policy review and enable municipalities to support socially owned renewables. In chapter 4, the report delves into defining what we mean by socially owned renewables. And this obviously stems from the Presidential Climate Commission report that was published last year. But defining so within the SISMEC context. And then we also look at providing insights from case studies, in the global north, in the global south, where energy cooperatives have succeeded, learning from the success stories as well, but also contextualizing it internally in the locality area. The third objective is about mobilizing support for implementation of so. I think SISMEC is so passionate about implementing this project, and their reasons and their motives for it are valid. So therefore, we need to mobilize key stakeholders that will provide the necessary technical support, the necessary financial support, and institutional capacity building support for SISMEC to implement, to take this campaign forward and to implement this project in their locality. The fourth objectives looks at, I think for us, inspiring broader movements. We would like to, for other mining affected communities to look at the SISMEC model and learn from that process. And importantly, I think highlighting how critical it is to adopt participatory approaches and tools when implementing such projects as well. The fourth objectives looks at, the fifth objective, which is the final one, looks at, changing the narrative where we position social ownership as a tool for community development. And as Katlego said, that where they can have income generating, facilities in their own communities, not only for energy privatization, but that must be led under a public sector led transition. So therefore, we would like to advocate for the current Electricity Regulations Act to enable municipally owned, publicly owned, or as we mentioned, socially owned renewable energy. These objectives have obviously informed the type of methodology that we adopted for the study. And Katlego did touch briefly on, what they had undertaken as part of compiling this report as well. Next slide, Leanne. Thank you. So that contextual background has guided us to adopt a philosophy that is rooted in a participatory approach that prioritizes community agency, right? That is embedded in a larger community campaign, which is to benefit from mining operations. SISMEC has played a central role both as researchers and the research subject as well. So essentially, their core team formed the community research team that then became part of the process of data collection and data analysis as well. And we believe that this approach, this philosophy has promoted collective learning, ownership and empowerment amongst these local stakeholders. Next slide. We have used a mixed method approach because we needed to address multiple research aims, right? And so this mixed method approach integrated both the qualitative and quantitative methods to ensure the richness and the depth of the information that we collected as well, in order for us to explore the model within the context of SISMEC. In terms of the methods and tools that we used, the study started with, conducting a desktop review of the regulatory frameworks that are there and existing literature that is there. In particular, the Presidential Climate Commission published published report on socially owned renewables as well. Secondly, the team also undertook site visits, as Katlego has mentioned, just to get an understanding from those communities that are or that have adopted a similar approach, and going down to Eastern Cape, where they visited, for instance, Saltuba Cooperative, which is one of the first pilots in the country to implement socially owned renewables. And that is a project that is actually implemented through the Transition Township project based at Nelson Mandela University. And also they went and visited Tsitsikamma in the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga as well. In between that, there were a number of workshops which were meant to capacitate the SISMEC core team on, energy, for instance, energy models that are there, energy and ownership models that are there, but also on, climate justice, for instance, to understand the issues around there, so that the issue is on a broader level. So these capacity workshops, they've actually worked a lot to synthesize a lot of information that came out of the empirical study that was conducted. So in terms of this empirical study, unfortunately, due to the resource constraints, we only managed to collect data from 4 villages, and we received 52 respondents. And my colleague here, Ferren, will outline the insights or the findings from that research. Next slide. And From that survey, there were two main key outputs that came out. I think firstly and importantly, a preliminary ownership model reflecting that community priorities. And also it laid a foundation for future feasibility studies and pilot installations as well for the area in where we were focusing this study, which is in Beresford and covering obviously over 290 villages. Thank you so much, and I'll hand over to you, to me.
Thank you so much, Marika, for that really in-depth understanding of what it took to produce these findings. And my sense is that this is not just a report, definitely a call to action and a blueprint for change. Certainly challenging the extractive energy models that we've seen so far, and foregoing a role of social ownership in ensuring a better, more inclusive energy transition. So thank you so much for outlining that for us. We'll now have Robert, who will talk about the findings and give us more insight about what the report has now shown. Over to you, Robert.
No, thank you, Tumi, and also thank you everybody who's in attendance. Unfortunately, we couldn't thank everybody individually, but I see a lot of sectors and different countries, so that's really appreciated. So, as you heard from Marika, that this report and this project had quite a few objectives, which also means many kinds of findings and many kinds of learnings, and which means I will focus on some of them. In particular, one, I'm going to focus on what emerged from the field research in the community, where SysMac core team with the broader project team support canvassed the community and almost tested their own local knowledge and so I'll focus on that, and then also on the bigger law and policy and other broader kinds of reforms and proposals. So first on the field work findings, Marika, just to recap that there were 51 household representatives in total interviewed in 4 villages, majority of whom were identified as women. So firstly, about living conditions a bit, about what people have income-wise. So the majority fell into the range between 1,601,000 and 3,200. So not a lot of household income, and that also meant that the vast majority would qualify for free basic electricity. But what was concerning was that only 4 households reported actually having access, actually receiving free basic electricity, pointing out to the bureaucratic nature of the application process. I know SysMac, in fact, members of SysMac are actually working in the community to ensure more members are receive the basic electricity. And so people are also spending a lot of money in the community on electricity. So the largest group of respondents were in the 201 to 400 range, which is over 10% of household income, of limited household income, is being spent on electricity. So showing that affordable electricity access is a challenge. And almost everybody is connected, all of the respondents were connected to the Eskom grid, which also shapes the kinds of forms of renewable energy that would work or be conceivable. So it means that grid-tied solutions are possible, not just the mini farm solution. So then with regards to what are the issues that the community would hope renewable energy, socially owned renewable energy would solve? What are the problems with the status quo? And the two main ones, there are more, but the two main ones are, and I think it should be self-evident from the previous slide, are the very high costs of electricity, as well as load shedding. Bear in mind that when the field research was done, it was a lot sooner from the really extreme levels of rolling blackouts. So then just views on solar energy and renewable energy more broadly. We started out open. We didn't want to say, okay, we're going to go solar. But what came out is that when people were asked to identify renewable energy and define renewable energy, is that not many people showed an understanding of the concept of what makes energy renewable energy. At the same time, but almost everybody cited, without being prompted, solar energy. That people knew that when people heard renewable energy, people knew that solar energy was a kind of renewable energy. So that was a starting point that almost everybody knew solar. And a majority believed that under the right circumstances, solar power can meet household needs. There were some people that qualify that, but in important ways, which shows a level of knowledge that only if there are enough solar panels, if the batteries have enough capacity, those kinds of things came up, which also indicates that there is a fairly good knowledge base on the practicalities of solar energy. And there was quite a lot of positivity and hope around the potential of solar energy, which is promising. So the next was related to kind of electricity as a right, the question. A lot of respondents said that the majority that said people should receive free basic electricity as a right. Certainly, people who can't afford electricity. Only a minority said that kind of only if you pay for it. So majority were of the view that electricity is a right. On openness to socially owned renewable energies, and in this case, community owned, a vast majority believed that it had potential, 90%. And several pointed out that for it to fulfill its potential, it's important that the process involves the training of community members to be employed in maintaining it for job creation. Then with regards to the where the pilot should be sited, there were two main views on that, but the majority view was that that a central location in each of the villages should be preferable, with a minority saying that even the pilot, which is obviously limited, should be household rooftops. Interestingly enough, and importantly, is that for both people who supported the one or the other cited security as the main reason. For example, those in support of a central location said it would be easier to monitor, less security staff would need to be employed, it would be cheaper and easier. A lot of the project team also felt that it would have more buy-in because it wasn't like particularly at the pilot stage where it is limited in its scale, limited number of you couldn't take it as a pilot to every household, or to be seen to be owned by more of the community. Then, with regards to in the event that it's set up and eventually selling to either the mine or the municipality, what if there is surplus income? What would, if the surplus in income received, what should that income be invested in? The priorities were tarred roads, water access, a clinic, and also community development, like income generating projects. So those were with regards to the governance and the kind of legal ownership form. That was where the field research did not really yield that much clarity. So a lot of one question, for example, was like, as a community, how do you collectively, when you want a development project in the community, how do you go about it? A lot of people are just saying that the development is not working. In regards to the legal forms, the most favored model, which was we put options including co-op, community trust, private company, etc. The prevailing model was a trust in the villages, possibly due to the familiarity. But on this point, the community core team from SISMAC had quite a strong stance. They haven't seen other communities and also read reports. They're very well informed about the debate around and the issues around trusts, including lack of transparency, people not seeing benefits in many areas, including the Northwest. And for that reason, the SISMAC core team were very in favor of more democratic models of which like cooperatives, which obviously Kapeko will expand upon in the ownership model. So in most respects, you'll see the ownership model is very much informed by what community members were saying, but the trust was one issue where we departed, and systematic members are keen on and think that there would be receptivity if it's workshopped and there's community engagement around a cooperative. So then the next group of findings relate to more broader policy implications. I'll briefly go through the fact that while most like social ownership has been in Europe experience, it's not exclusively a global north phenomenon. There are examples for example, in Brazil, Puerto Rico, and India. Many of the examples, the electricity is primarily for use, though not exclusively. And for example, the windmill project in India, it's financed by a mixture of government subsidies and local financing. Quite a few of these examples, there was a role for government in financing, which I think points to some of the recommendations, the broader policy recommendations on the importance of public financing in the picture. Then we'll go on to the kind of the big recommendations. So the first overarching recommendation is that a specific and enabling law and policy mechanisms are needed for socially owned renewable energy. Firstly, to the broadest policy change that is needed, and here I must tip my hat to, and I know there are members are present, the Alternative Information and Development Center, AIDC, they've done a lot of work on what a public sector-led transition would look like, and that was the first recommendation, a democratized, decorporatized ESCOM, which would have a developmental mandate, which would mean that community and worker-owned renewable energy, different forms of social ownership, would be supported without expecting a return, would be seen as part of the developmental mandate. And also that usually would be adequately financed by Treasury and other public development institutions. So that broader policy change, I think, is critical for scaling up social ownership. Then also the current legislative frameworks, including Schedule 2 of Electricity Regulation Act, are designed to promote private sector investment rather than social ownership and collective good. So examples of that is there are no formal mechanisms for supporting cooperatives. There are no processes in the event and tariff system for cooperatives at a certain scale to sell to the grid and ensure that is in line with broader access to electricity objectives. We have cost-reflective tariffs, which are really starving communities. All of that, and legislative reform is needed for a dedicated mechanism to guide and support communities and workers pursuing social ownership, such as a system for grants, for applying for grants, for accessing training support, and possibly an appropriate feed-in tariff for cooperatives, and also kind of limits to the scale at which cooperatives can sell. So it still remains centrally a public system, a public-owned system. And related to this is the importance of public financing, is that given obviously the levels of poverty, inequality, unemployment, for example, the household income levels in the 4 villages are just an example of that. It's not realistic to expect communities like, say, in Europe, to provide like much of the financing for renewables, and subsidization is really critical. And so we again reiterate that public financing from a decorporatized ESCOM in the long run is what's very vital. However, there are lots of low-hanging fruits, and particularly for mine-affected communities, where companies already, as we know here, and some companies are here, as well as the Minerals Council, but companies are legally required to have community development project, income-generating projects in their social and labor plans, and that is a potential source for funding social ownership projects in mining affected communities, and we would definitely like to. I think it's important to have more developmental orientated income generating projects rather than just small like business incubator centers, etc. We would. I think that's really vital, and also it's something that we would like to see. I think there's a potential for other communities to learn from the systematic example and get organized and start a campaign and start campaigning for support for socially owned renewables and other development oriented projects in their social neighbor plans that can either create jobs or meaningfully improve access to basic necessities such as electricity as one example. And then our final recommendation is more about the how of meaningful social ownership, and that is the need for meaningful community engagement from the very beginning, from the conception stage, the campaign stage, pilot and rollout. Because without buy-in from a broader community, projects can't work. But also without a movement, without an organized movement, communities don't have a strong bargaining position. And so it's essential that communities are as organized as possible, and also communities are linked up to other communities as possible. And there's a linked up campaign to ensure that engagements with the government, private sector, and others is from a position of strength, and that the kind of support provided is on favorable terms. Also, benefits from projects must be broad-based and not just for local elites. And all of this requires this movement, this campaign, and understanding requires workshops, a lot of workshopping and education on the basis of what causes climate change, on ideas of climate justice, what exactly is social ownership in different possible forms, but also what are the practical challenges at the moment to overcome and what has worked for other communities. So I think those are some of the key findings. There are many more in this report, but those are the key findings, particularly from the field research and on the broader law and policy changes, and also on the need for more links between communities and workers as well, and the need for campaigns for social ownership and also really real developmental projects in mining areas that can allow for a meaningful just transition, and areas that post mining are not ghost towns but that have other sectors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert, for taking us through those findings. They're extensive, and I think the only way to really digest them is to get a copy of the report, which we will be distributing today after this discussion via press release. Just in case we do not have your email on our contact list, please do drop it in the chat so we can make sure to get that report copied to you as soon as we are done with this conversation. But thank you so much, Robert, for breaking down those findings for us. And I think it certainly shows that quite simply, when communities lead, energy solutions can be more just and sustainable and transformative. So all of that is available in the report. So please do drop your email address in our chat and we will get the report to you. Thank you so much, Robert, for taking us through that. Now I'm going to go back to Katlego, who is going to share with us one of the proposed models for social ownership that the systematic committee has been considering. Over to you, Katlego.
Okay, thanks again to me. Thanks. Yes, some of the models that the committee has chosen, as Rob has mentioned, that committee has identified a cooperative as their ownership model. So the reason for this cooperative is that we have experience and numerous experience of community trust in communities that which cannot work for communities. There is lack of transparency there's no accountability. There's a lot of things that is taking place when coming to community trust. So we thought that even if somebody wants to go out of the community trust, it's going to be difficult because we go through costs to get out of the community trust. So we chose the cooperative as an important ownership model. And we thought that even if a community member is part of the cooperative, it's easy for the community member to remove himself or be out of the cooperative. And it's also important because the process on which you are going to go out of the process, the cooperative, is very easy. It doesn't drag you through courts and all those stuff. And we also say it is important for this project to involve more community members. That's why we chose cooperative, that we say community members should come on board because this is their own social owned renewable energy. They should come on board and be active and be part of the cooperative with more ideas, being part of the campaigns as well. So it is important to also bring on board communities which are affected. So, and also we said why we think we chose the grid-tied solar farm. We chose the grid-tied solar farm is very important because in terms of security purposes, we thought that if it's in one centered place for security purposes, it's very safe and it cannot be stolen, as we are going to be creating jobs which will hire security to look out for those solars, and also to be able to maintain in a surrounded area at once is also very important and very key. That's why we said the solar farm is very important. For if it's an individual rooftop, it's going to be difficult for maintaining the households from one place to the other. So in a solar farm, it's very easy and very important for communities as well. As I spoke about job creation as well, we said in this whole project, we are keen that the community should have income generating projects, which we think that it is best for these communities to have jobs. Even if it will not be every community member, but the least that we could have is that as little as we have one or two members of the community who is part of the project, who is hired in that project, it is also very important. Also, for the monitoring purposes, we think that the solar farm it will be monitored at a centered place, make sure that everything is also accordingly. And also we thought that it's a cheaper way to have the solar farm in one place, in a centered place. So those are some of the things that as community members and as the core team, we thought about for this project. And we also made sure that we distribute as much information to the local municipality, the mining companies, to make sure that they come on board and support this social owned renewable energy for the communities, which is very, very, very important for communities. And also it will assist in terms of job creation, as we have issues of cane maintenance, which the mine is under cane maintenance for the longest time now. We have a lot of high rate of unemployment. So the municipality, the government, the ESCOM company should be on board to support this campaign. And we urge everybody else who is interested in coming on board to be part of this initiative to feel free to contact us and let us know when we can be able to join forces for these communities. Thanks to me.
Thank you so much, Sekhukhune. I think that's a really important point for us in this program today, is to hear from SysMec how real this could be, the concept of social ownership. Ordinarily, initially it actually sounds very large and it's a bit difficult to wrap your head around. And the more we speak about it, it may start to feel a bit impossible, transforming an energy system, moving away from what we currently know, shifting power to from the hands of private corporations to communities. But the more we discuss it, the more we hear each other speak about it, the more it's described. I really do think we do start to make it seem possible, because it is possible. Like Katlego has explained, there are models which the Cismec community have been exploring, and one of them being the cooperative model. And it's really powerful to hear her describe it and to start to realize that the solutions are tangible. We're not just speaking theoretically or in abstract. So thank you so much, Katlego, for sharing with us. And now we have Farron Pedro, who's going to talk to us about the next steps in this campaign of social ownership more broadly. Over to you, Farron.
Thank you, Tumi. And again, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming. Yes, so I'm going to talk to you about what we're going to be doing next and opportunities for you to be involved if you're part of a mining affected community, if you're a stakeholder in a mining house, if you work for an NGO or are interested or working in community owned renewable energy projects. Pay particular attention because there might be some ways in which there's overlap and we can work together. So yes, I'll be talking about that now, how we can power change together. So Sekhukhune is a land of contradictions, right? It's rich in platinum, but the majority of people remain trapped in poverty. Mining companies extract billions. Comrade Katlego spoke about the number of mining companies in the area. But according to the local municipality, the average household in this area where Katlego lives earns 14,600 a year. On average, the households are living off of that, which is far below the food poverty line. Meanwhile, the same companies in that area are investing in renewable energy for themselves, but also, sorry about that. Everyone put your phones on silent. 1 second. Okay, yes, so I was saying that these mining houses, and hopefully there are representatives here, you are investing in renewable energy for your own operations to ensure the security of your operations and security of electricity supply. But what about the communities that have borne the brunt of mining for decades? For over a century, mining companies have extracted wealth from Sekhukhune, but not given enough back. Social labor plans were supposed to uplift communities, but too often we've seen that, and in our research report, community members report seeing that these are often filled with empty promises and not significant enough investment in the community for real economic development. So now that mines are investing in renewable energy for their own operations and communities are still relying on expensive, unreliable electricity, if they have access at all, what are we going to do about it? This isn't just unfair, but it's unsustainable. Even for the mining firms in the area, it's not sustainable. The just transition, the transition to renewables can't just be for corporations. It can't be just for corporations. If mines can spend millions on renewables for themselves, why can't they invest in community-owned energy, community infrastructure projects that can secure and result in sustainable economic development for the whole community, including those firms? So we're presenting a vision where energy justice is not just a slogan or a rhetoric in an annual report, but a reality, where communities own, control, and benefit from this renewable energy transition or expansion into renewable energy. This is about treating electricity as a public good and a basic human right. And so how can mines in the region contribute to that? How can they repair some of the damage that they've done in these communities and invest and transform and uplift them? This can be about dignity, about jobs, about real economic freedom. So our report explores the potential of socially owned renewable energy in this transformative approach to address poverty, inequality, to foster economic development, to enable a just transition for the communities of Sekhukhune. So we need to do this with partners and stakeholders, right, who have a real stake and interest in seeing the economic development and prosperity of the community, to ensure that their operations are secure and that there are skills in the area that are able to support the operation and the expansions of our country and the transformation of our industries. So what are we asking for? What are we calling on from different stakeholders in that area? Well, we're saying mining companies, you do need to step up, not with charity, but with reparations and investments in your own sustainable economic development. So repairing some of the damage, historical damage that's been done in mining affected communities. And that is part of the idea of social labor plans, but making these meaningful. And it could be something really magnificent to see a mine and a community working together to create sustainable and decent jobs for that area. That is possible. So we can fund, mines should be funding feasibility studies, investing in skills training, and commit to buying power from community projects. That is how we can have this kind of synergy and development and security for all stakeholders. Right? PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers' latest report shows that mines are already investing in renewables in South Africa. So now you need to include the people and the land that you're extracting from, the communities that you're extracting from. Local government, we need local government to support. Another form of socially owned renewable energy is municipal owned renewable energy. So we need public investment in renewable energy infrastructure owned by the municipality with significant community oversight, skills training, and technology transfers. We see these renewable energy companies coming into mining areas where there are lots of mining operations because they see the market for renewable energy. But do we see the transfer of skills to local community members who are able to then learn these skills and create their operations or develop and implement operations of their own? Are we seeing that? Not enough. And we need local government to step up and make sure that we see that kind of skills transfer, skills development as regulation and part of the integrated development plans. And we need to make sure that local government is playing a part, an active part in making sure that social labor plans prioritize community energy ownership and also that they are meaningful. So we don't need any more delays on this. And the municipalities are often also under-resourced and they don't have a lot of capacity. Use your community. Use people's power to manage oversight, to hold service providers accountable, to train community members to do the work locally. There's so much to be done, and there's so many people, talented people, that just don't have the opportunity and skills given to them on skills training, skills development given to them to be able to contribute to these projects. So local government has a really important role to play. We also are looking and speaking to other social movements, NGOs, renewable energy experts to help us design, fund, and train our people and our communities on renewable energy, community energy, and governance skills, cooperative management, so that we can have these projects be sustained. But we need to work, as Robert said, we need to work together to make sure that we have the leverage and the people's power, the collective power, to be able to demand that government take our priorities seriously, and corporations, in particular mining corporations in mining affected communities, take up these issues seriously too. And of course, most importantly, we do need mining affected communities, other mining affected communities, and communities all across Sekhukhune to lead a campaign for socially owned renewable energy in mining affected communities. This can't be imposed on communities. We want to say that this is a good idea, and this is a model we can learn together. We can create these projects and network together and build a real campaign of mining affected communities across the country challenging mines to invest in renewable energy for the benefit of the communities around that mine. We can do that together if we're networked and supported by different energy experts and NGOs, and we can work together. So this pilot is just the start, right? We must build a movement for energy democracy across South Africa. That means we need public education on energy ownership. We need public education on who owns our energy systems now and how can we change that to make sure that ordinary South Africans, the majority of working class, poor, displaced, rural, marginalized people in this country, that is the majority, that they have access to the benefits of energy ownership. We need to fight for policy changes Mareka spoke about. We need to make sure that we have enabling legislation so that communities can benefit. Now, there are debates around what that could look like, but ultimately our North Star is what is going to be in the interest of uplifting and developing this community and where they can take advantage of the transformative potential of the energy transition. How are they going to benefit? Are we just going to leave out the majority of people and the energy transition will just be a small sliver of society? Or can this be inclusive? Can this be broad-based? Yes, it can, but we need to work together to make that the case, and we need to make sure that our policies reflect our interests. And also we need to demand that mines and government put people over profits, right? Rob mentioned the idea of subsidizing these projects, of the developmental mandate. These aren't profit-seeking projects, these are developmental projects, and they should be, and development finance should be provided for projects like this to make sure that communities are uplifted and self-sufficient. So the energy transition must be by and for the people, or it will fail. We face systemic barriers. Right now, it's easier for a mine to build a solar plant than a community. So that's a problem. But we must change. That can change. So we need laws that can support municipal and cooperative energy. We need public funding for community projects, not just for big corporations through subsidies, and strong enforcement of social labor plans to ensure mines pay their dues. So will you join us? We ask, join this campaign for socially owned renewable energy, for mining affected communities. This can really be a transformative campaign, help organize our communities and fight and win the battle for public energy for all South Africans that's sustainable and clean and safe and affordable. Thanks, comrades.
Thank you so much, Farron, and I really appreciate how much passion you delivered. You know, those sentiments, those statements, and ultimately, it's very clear that there's a lot at stake with the energy transition. And if we're going to do it, we need to do it right. So definitely, this is a call to action. Absolutely, for everyone who's on this webinar today. To the mining companies, we're addressing to government, local governments, and national governments, government entities like Eskom, and anyone who's participating in the just transition, which should in essence be all of us. We're all part of this transition, and we all need to be involved in making sure that the outcomes are indeed truly just. So really appreciate what you've shared, Farron. We are now through with the presentations from our panelists this morning, and would like to open the floor for any questions from the audience. To any one of our panelists, if you have a question, you could use the Q&A chat box. But if you're not finding the box so easily, you can also pop your question in the chats and we will try to find it. So there's a question from Janet Cherry. Hi, thank you so much for joining us, Janet. The question here says, on the model of socially owned renewable energy, who would the village cooperatives sell the electricity to? Eskom or municipality or mines? If it aims to realize income, how does this relate to social labor plans? How does the village relate to the mining relate with the mining company in this model? I think Mareka, since you and Yet are friends as well, so do you want to take that question? Mareka?
Hi, Tumi. Hi, sorry about that. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to Janet's question. I think, the response from or Feren's comments really touched on, who we want or who SISMEC would like to sell this energy to, right? That's number one. Secondly, in terms of funding, who needs to fund this? I think the issue of SLPs is a community that is saying, we need you to, we need you to support a project that we as a community have identified, right? So support us in that respect, okay? We can provide you the mine, get into a partnership. We can provide you the mine with electricity that is generated from over 290 community villages that are there. So there is already, an audience, a community that is ready, that has the land, and possibly existing assets in that community, which can generate energy in partnership with the mines through the SLPs, and support and provide, the mines with electricity. SISMEC is saying we can provide even ESCOM with electricity. We can become a community energy provider, and because it's grid tied, we generate the electricity and provide it to you, ESCOM, obviously at an agreed rate. But importantly, obviously, is to provide electricity to that community to address the issue of energy poverty, right? That's one. I'm not sure if perhaps maybe I've answered the other question. It sounded like there were a few questions that came out of that. To me?
Thanks, Marika. I think you've covered it. Yeah, I'm happy with it. But Janet, if you'd like Marika to expand, please feel free. The next question is from Richard, which I'm going to direct to Robert. So has there been engagement with local government about potential for FBE funds and co-op members qualify for or could be channeled to the project?
Thank you, Tumi, and thank you, Comrade Richard Worthington. Yes, so we have not yet to date. However, we are doing a series of, some of which we have already started, series of engagements around this report with different role players in government and the mining sector. We have some mining industry engagements have already started, some with also independent power producers and others. But we are going to be engaging with the municipality, and we are going to be looking at free basic electricity funding and other mechanisms of support, as well as with going forward with SALGA as well and other. So there will be a lot further engagement as the campaign develops post this report on like a number of the different possibilities of, because for this to work, the support of many is needed, and a lot of different sources of funding and kinds of funding need to be explored. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. Question here from Ijumeling says, I would like to find out if there have been engagements with technical experts on the process of independently producing and selling electricity. This includes considerations for security of supply, connection to the grid, also the legal side of signing PPAs, basically anything assessing the feasibility of projects. I'm not sure who would like to take this one. Farron, maybe?
Yeah, thank you, Comrade Itumeleng. Just to say that, yes, so the next step in the project would be doing a pre-feasibility study. So answering some of those questions, so working with technical experts to see which of the sites make most sense, working out depending on which partners we go with, and how we end up funding the project, the nature of the power purchase agreement. So yeah, I think your questions are correct. That is what we need to find out next, and that also requires quite some funding, right? So what we'd like to do now is work with mines and the and renewable energy companies that different ones that we've been talking to, and we're in the process of selecting how we're going to making the final decision on who we're going to be working with. But yeah, that will be the kinds of questions we're going to be answering next.
Thank you so much, Farron. And there's a comment from Pastor Lebu. I'd like to give you the floor, Pastor Lebu, if you'd like to speak about what you've said in the chat. You're welcome to unmute.
Good day.
Hi.
Am I audible enough?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, beloved. This is Pastor Lebo from the Northern Cape Province. Thank you for listening to you guys with all these findings. That is a true reflection of what is currently happening, even in my region. As you know, that Northern Cape has 5 districts, and we are the rural marginalized region to all the amongst the districts. So all those findings, the poverty, a lack of support from the mines. I believe that in my district, it's a far-fetched dream. So it happened that somebody shared with me the link last week for me just to register, since I'm very, very much keen to see how best can we assist and empower our communities. Most of them now, especially our youth, they're unskilled. I've tried to reach out many times, but nothing, not much. Also to involve.
Oh dear. Pastor Lebo, we lost your audio, but I think we did catch a little bit of what you're saying, and thank you so much for coming on the platform and unmuting so that we could also hear how your experience. Thank you so much for sharing. Still got some questions to answer to our panelists. It's a question from Tabo. So Tabo is asking if the communities have identified the land for renewable energy projects already. I think this would be a good question to insert, perhaps the role of the traditional leadership in these communities, as well as a question about who has been approached to build the energy facilities. And are the lands occupied by communities? Will they need to be moved when the facilities are constructed? Is this part of the report we've shared today? Thank you so much, Tabo, for your question. I'm going to allow any of the panelists to answer you.
Can we
Thanks,
pass it on to
Nneka.
Katlego, please? Yeah, thank
Thanks.
you.
Good idea. Thanks,
Yes.
Katlego.
Tabo, thank you for the wonderful question. But in this question, I would say, during our research, the communities has identified some numerous farms, and some have showed us the mountains which are level, where they think that the electricity can be based, the farm can be based there, and community traditional leaders are aware of this, and they are clapping hands and wanting to be part of this initiative to support the community in order to have access to free basic electricity. And it's also a burning issue to especially the traditional leaders, as they have mentioned that when going to the municipality or maybe the mines in terms of villages which are growing. So for them to get electricity, it takes them a lot of time and a very long years. Some have indicated that it takes them about 10 years to have electricity. So when bringing this initiative to the community, and traditional leaders were so proud and wanted to be part of this initiative and willing to even show us the land where we can be able to put those solar farms. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kefejo, for taking that question and for the answer you've provided. Two more questions I see we still need to answer. From Richard again, regarding the call for dedicated legislation to support SOAR, how does this recommendation related to ongoing electricity market reform and would regulations under existing legislation not be more practical? Robert, could you take that one? And can I also pull out a question here from Letsatsi? How much electricity do they anticipate to produce at what cost? Be the GHG of the project, savings versus profit, or will this form part of the feasibility study? Farron, can I hand that one to you? So Robert can answer Richard's question and Farron can answer Latsi's question. Over to you, Robert.
Richard, for a truly excellent question. And I think there's a balance between, I think we want also a broader campaign that engages ultimately even beyond in the room, engages labor on a reform agenda, which includes a public-led transition. And so I think it's important that we keep that alive and try and build a campaign there to shift things and a resistance to privatization. However, having said that, I think the different and obviously government is now going on the opposite trajectory, which is not something, is obviously something that we are strongly opposed to. But from a practical level, I think it will be important we will obviously in the different in the different comments processes, and that also still advocate for within the reform dispensation a special system for supporting community ownership and a simplified system for applying potentially sell to municipality for accessing technical support, for accessing training. We're still going to we will also campaign. We are going to advocate for that within the system as well, but we're also going to retain a kind of a political position that that we need a public sector transition, and we need to move away from an austerity process, which is a policy which is not just meaning that electricity is increasingly unaffordable with the principle of cost-effective tariffs skyrocketing, but also that our roads have tons of potholes, that there are not enough teachers in schools. We need to build that campaign against austerity and for a strong public sector, while also calling for specific reforms under the existing system and mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And now over to Farron.
Yeah, thanks, Comrade Mtlatsi. So we don't, yes, all of those details will be worked out in a feasibility study. We are hoping to build a substantial installation in one of the villages to feed, a significant number of the, or provide electricity to a significant number of the households in the village. But yes, the details of that are going to be decided on, based on lots of different variables in a feasibility study.
Thank you, Farron. And there is a question as well from Marine. Rebecca, maybe you can take this one. What is the quickest way to implement the findings? Marine also suggests some ideas here as well, which we'll take note of. If you can, Rebecca.
Hi, Dumi, are you asking for me? Sorry, I just want to do a quick read. Findings of the issue. The first, the provision of okay. Host communities. Okay, very long. It's about three questions there. I tend to agree with you in terms of, should the first provision be, reliable energy to communities within SDM? Absolutely. Funnily enough, if you look at Limpopo, for instance, where Sekhukhune district is based, I think they have achieved about 97, if not 98% electricity access, right? But those communities obviously still experience energy poverty because of, one, they cannot afford, to pay for electricity. Right, they experience what government refers to now as load reduction, for instance, which is, blackouts on a daily basis, right? So that definitely is an issue, and it's one of the findings that came out of the report that, those communities, they do need access to reliable energy. And yes, this can be achieved by the mining companies, SLPs, by extending site-based renewable energy generation systems to their host communities. I think it speaks to that. That area, I know that with the establishment of the SEZ, one of their mandate is actually to assist in rolling out electricity access as well in the area. And obviously mining companies are working closely with government in that regard. And the second step would include scaling of the appropriate regulations and PPP environment. Yeah, sorry, I'm reading very fast. I'm trying to include host communities. Okay. Yeah, I think some of these issues will definitely be addressed when we do the feasibility study, when we look at the, the financial models, the technical models, where to start, but yes, they will be definitely I think informed by the context in that community, because, we will be at fault, I think, as researchers, because that's who we are now, and what we are trying to mobilize, support, institutions and companies that can support SISMEC in achieving their mandate. And we will be at fault to decide on behalf of that community. So whoever comes on board with this campaign, with the support, they need to understand that developmental approach, to say that all the solutions, everything that comes out or agreed upon, in this project, it must be in collaboration with the host, as you refer to as host communities. So at this point, we cannot really speak on behalf of that community to say, yes, you must prioritize this and not prioritize that. But yeah, it's something that the community will have to agree upon. Thank you.
Thanks, Marika. And we'd love to hear from you directly as well. So we are running out of time, but I think we can hear from Alex, who's please raise his hand to speak. Alex, over to you.
Thanks so much, Tumi, and thanks everybody. This is really exciting. I was also pleased to see the head of Eskom's Just Energy Transition Office on this call, which also then sort of made me think, like, what role, do we see Eskom playing in this And maybe do you think the Just Energy Transition Office could be an active part of driving this forward? I think it's been touched on, but maybe we can dive in a little bit further and maybe even invite them to maybe weigh in if they want. I don't know. But thank you so much. This is really exciting work. Really appreciate all that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex, and also inviting to speak Dr. Vikesh.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm not here to offer solutions as such, but this is something that we have been grappling with because, well, personally, social ownership of these projects is quite key to the energy transition, as was mentioned earlier. It is something that we are exploring. And we don't have the solutions, but it is something that we need to co-create and jointly explore to see how we can actually do this, because we always hear this comment about not effecting the transition without us, and it's valid. When I say us, communities, right? It's a valid feedback as such. Just as a caution to the team as such that's going to do the pre-feasibility study, be careful about trying to find solutions that fixes or addresses all of your problems, because you may end up solving none of them. Try to be conscious of the fact that free basic electricity and social ownership may not be the same concept. In fact, they are different concepts. So you may want to, going back to the cost recovery aspect, you may want to consider recovering the free basic electricity component from National Treasury. You may want to consider a phased approach towards ownership. So not happening instantaneously upon plant completion as such, but as the plant generates, as you over time, when the asset owner as such has been allowed to pay back the capital, that thereafter it is transitioned and the ownership as such phases over to the community for continued ownership, for continued operations and maintenance. And then also equally important is the sizing of these plants. When looking at the size, be careful about limiting it to only feed the community, because this is another opportunity for you to cross-subsidize, where you have a much bigger plant that allows you to feed into the grid to subsidize the component that you're feeding into those communities as free basic electricity, but also to be recovered from Treasury. So these are not solutions, they are just suggestions in terms of how it could, or how we could jointly approach this, but social ownership is a key component of the energy transition, and it is something that we are equally grappling with. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vikesh, for your contributions. I saw a lot of things definitely agreeing. It is 11:33, so I appreciate you hanging on the last 2 minutes. We have gone a bit over time, but it was just important to hear from all of you, to answer your questions, and yeah, to engage and make this an engaging session. And certainly it seems that there's still more questions to answer. But the report, we're just excited to share with you that this is something that this is my community and CALS, 350, Ahimsa, LHR, members of the Climate Justice Coalition have put a lot of hard work into it, and we're super excited to share the findings with you today. And as I said earlier, if you're worried you may not be on our mailing list, please make sure to drop your email down below so that you receive today's press release and a copy of the report. But I think it will also be an invitation to stay in touch with us by dropping your email. We'd love to continue to let you know about the developments in this campaign. This is an ongoing campaign. A lot of work still needs to be done, working towards the pilot study, and we'd really love you to be a part of that process. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists for all your insights, for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your passion as activists, fighting the good fight. We really appreciate hearing from you today. I will now stop the recording, and yeah, I hope that you'll follow us on social media and stay in touch via email. Thank you again.